Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Rebel. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Kind of a lot of, complicated things going on, and, many different facets and aspects of this whole situation, as obviously Cruz is getting ready for like the motions, in court and stuff like that, as obviously, Benji's, firm is taking up the case, and obviously it's a situation where Cassidy isn't allowed to be a part of it because it is a bit of a conflict of interest. But for her, it's like Cruz filed the stuff like after she had already quit. But it's also like, yeah, but your mom's a part of this too. But she's still, and that's to me, once again, like, I just think it's so interesting that Cassidy would be so adamant about like, no. I know what my mom's connected to and all this. You've heard so much about this case, but I guess it's like still a thing of I think it probably comes down to like what you can prove and stuff like that. And more cases come out positive because like obviously she's listening in on that woman earlier in the episode who talks about the fact that the valve saved her life, so she doesn't want it taken off the market because it could save so many other people's lives. It's like it was a miracle. It didn't give me a second chance. A second chance of life. It gave me a life. So it is that thing of like, yeah, it worked for some people, but it also didn't work for others because that's a complicated thing. What it also comes down to is this company knew that potentially it was hurting people, that it was making people sick, but they still push forward with it. Because obviously Nate and Misha do some talking later on in the episode, and it turns out like that basically they never went through clinical trials, and the reason for that is that basically it's a loophole, and like where like the FDA doesn't have to like approve of something. Like if you just say like, oh, it's like if something's been modified a little bit, you can like squeeze it by being like, oh, this is still like this similar product, it's just kind of changed a little. So if it's just like there's an open enough room for it to be like, oh, technically it's still the same product, quotes around it, and so it gets grandfathered in, is kind of how Misha was kind of explaining it. So that's how they kind of got around like doing human testing out there. They were just so quick to kind of put it back on market. It's like, oh, we made some adjustments, and it's the same product. It's not like it's changed that much, so technically we don't have to really go through all the red tape of like going through FDA testing and stuff like that. So because obviously Rebel is, made her mark by, coming at it from a public standpoint, public relations standpoint of just showing like, the support, red balloons and being on the steps with all these people who are potential victims of this, so she's winning publicly. But, Cassidy is the one that was kind of suggesting like knowing how to help her dad and everyone else kind of go at it, when the time comes in the courtroom, because the plan is to... Because initially, when Cruz eventually ends up having, I think it was actually Lana who ended up having to tell Rebel, because she was like, yeah, don't be mad at me. And it's like, well, you just let her go. It's like, well, she's a grown woman, she can make her own choices. But it's like, for Rebel, it's like Benny's using her and she doesn't even realize it. Because for her, it's like, when at the law firm she was originally at, she was like, I tried to like speak my mind and people just, just stared at my chest and treated me like I was stupid. Benji, yes, he looked at my chest, but he didn't talk to me like I'm stupid, so, and the fact is that he was someone that used to, fight for causes, used to, but now it's like, all he does, he cares about is money, at least from her perspective, and she's worried. It's like, I don't want my daughter getting corrupted by all of that, with all of this, But when the time came, Cruz was like, no, you can't be here, this is a conflict of interest, and he tried to bring it up in court by being like, Cassidy can't be there, it's a whole thing. And even later on, Rebel kind of gets at Cassidy about it, because she's like, you don't even realize he's using you. Like, she's like, you don't realize that everything's a manipulation by Benji. He's like it's a chess game. It's like 4D chess. There's moves. You just don't see how sly he is and stuff like that. But for Cassidy, it's like, everything that's happened, I've made my own choices. Even being a part of the Stonemore case and stuff like that, for her, it's like, that was my decision. Dad didn't want me to be a part of it. I wasn't supposed to be a part of it. I wasn't supposed to know about it. But I am. I managed to convince him to be a part of it. But then later on finds out, oh, wait, everything was already set in motion. They had already did everything, like set it up just in case, like, oh, this whole motion fell through the moment they were like, oh yeah, there's a conflict of interest. And it's like for Cassie to be like, holy crap, Mom was right. You like knew this far in advance. It's like, you might be a little hurt, but the fact of the matter is, I mean, that's how this thing is. Yeah, I used you a little bit, but come on, now you're in the big leagues, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, home dude is kind of like, nah, yeah, your dad used you, but you kind of use him right back. It's just like, you don't want to waste this, great opportunity you have. And that's the complicated thing of like, because her mom was trying to explain to her, you are on the wrong side of this. And it's just like, it's the narrative that she's kind of like, yeah, I feel bad for these people. But her mom's almost like, these are thousands of people who are sick and going to die because of this valve. Like the valve that comes from the company you're willing to work with and kind of defend, And now kind of realizing, like, wait, her dad kind of used her. I mean, hell, even sadly, later on, Amir kind of breaks up with, which I wasn't even sure, like, they were in a natural, like, where things were. Because the way she was talking with Nate last episode made me kind of think, like, oh, like, you guys aren't really, well, they aren't, like, really big into, like, committed relationships. They kind of issues when it comes to commitment. But he kind of breaks up with her at the end of the episode because it's like, for her, it's a situation it was like, for him, it's like, I can't believe, despite everything, like, you would do this to Cruz, is why he was more so, because it's like, look at all these people who are hurting and suffering, and yet you're still deciding to, like, work with Stone more, and that's what upset him, because it's like, he was hoping that she, change her mind, ask Cruz for her job back and everything, because it's like, he thought, like, seeing this thing, but realizing, like, she was a part of what happened in court, almost lost Cruz's case, and what that meant, because that was the big crux of this, like, basically, with this conflict of interest, basically, the, Cruz would have to kind of remove himself from it, and everyone, Helen and the group, her friends and everything, could get a new lawyer, but it would take time and everything like that. So Cruz is already associated with the case. He's already someone dedicated to the cause, so they'd have to kind of basically start fresh with someone else. And it's like all that hard work and everything, they'd be kind of screwed over because of what Cassidy, her part to play it in all of this. And it's just kind of like, you willingly kind of went along with that. Yeah, your dad and them had their own part to play, and it's like, they set this up, they manipulated you, you were more so upset about that, but it's still the thing of, you willingly played your part in that courtroom, and that's what upset Amir. Like, it's like, I can't be with someone that's like that, and kind of leave. So things aren't, like, taking this job wasn't as smooth as she thought it would be, because obviously it has led to issues, because I mean, they didn't have any interactions in this episode, but even Ziggy was like, wait, what is she doing working with Stonemore, like, but it's like, about Cassidy, but beyond that, we don't know what Ziggy's going to, like, say to her, whether she said anything in between, like, the scenes, or like whether it's something like that, that we weren't privy to those conversations, or maybe they just haven't talked or interacted at all. But it is a situation of, like, obviously Rebels got her issues with it, but it's more so at Benji because of the way he's handling things, and it's like, I don't want my daughter to basically turn out like you, where just money kind of becomes everything. You stop looking at fighting for the right thing, and you just kind of, it's like, yeah, like, doing your job is fine and dandy, but you got to also be on the right side of things, essentially, So some other interesting things with the whole Nate thing, Nate and Misha. Now he's kind of getting in that position where he kind of wants more, because I think it made him kind of reevaluate himself. Because I didn't talk about it last episode, but there was that lady he kind of given the eyes, and she was like, no, and he was like, wait, what? And I guess, like, there's a lot of women he's kind of done that to. He's had a tendency of, like, oh, we get close, but then, like, before anything gets serious, we break up, or I kind of ghost them, like, once again, kind of commitment issues to a certain extent. And so for Misha, it's a thing of, yes, we can continue doing the whole work and sex thing, or we can just do work and work. Because for her, it's like, I'm someone who visits my grandmother, I call her Nana, every day. I talk to her every day and stuff like that. Like, how often, when's the last time you saw your grandmother? And it was like, he's like, last year, or rather like Christmas or something like that. So she's kind of saying like, we're two different people. We kind of want two different things. So kind of almost like I know who you are. You kind of won't change. So like, we just want different things. So we could go with option A or option B. And he was like, no, I like option A. The whole like, we can do the whole like, sex, because the sex is nice and awesome and super casual, and we would just kind of keep it there and professional and work as well, so. And that kind of, he had that conversation with Cassidy being like, are we the type that like we could meet? Because it was like, like, have you ever met Amir's grandparents or something like that? Because it's like, are we the type that can, it's once again the normal conversations of just like, could we ever just like go see a significant other's grandma? Like, are we the type of person? I think it kind of gets him evaluating himself on a lot of different levels. But obviously, another case ends up taking up a lot of Rebel's time in this particular episode. Not just, obviously, the main thing being the Stonemore case, but her and Lana are working on a case with a lady named Jackie who's being kicked out of her place. And obviously, her landlord is just being an utter tool about it and just threatening her, slashing her tires, doing each and every little thing, apparently calling like pest control or something about a ferret she has, and it's like, wait, does she actually have a ferret? It's like, no, doing whatever they can just to kind of bump up charges, to kind of just get her to move out. And so, Jackie kind of took Rebel's approach and tries to fight back, put on her cape, and it kind of backlashed on her because, like, she got, like, the pushback was even stronger, but Rebel won't let her back down, and it's like, no, we won't back down, we're going to keep up the fight. So they go to the landlord's house. It's like, oh yeah, that's my grandkids, they're going to cook me something, make me stuff. So it was like a birthday party or anniversary. No, I think it was his anniversary or something like that. And so he didn't, at first you're like, because I was like, okay, so is he actually the one behind this, or is it a thing of like, he passes the buck to other people to handle, and they're the dicks, but he's the dick for just not overseeing it? It's like, no, turns out he's the one just as much responsible for everything. So like Rebel, Lana, and Jackie went around talking to everybody about the apartments and the places like that, because it's all stemmed from like Jackie's just wanting clean water, obviously, and like asking people time and time again to get it fixed, but it never happened. So, and hence why we're here, where we are. And I like that Rebel kind of like bothered that dude who's like a dad. He's like, oh yeah, I got a kid together. And she's like, I get it. That time in between and stuff like that. She's like, I get it. I got a son named Nate. And it's like, she's like, yeah, but the development delays and stuff like that, about like the water and what it could, the lasting effects and stuff like that. And it's like, as like this dude is like a, concerned parent and stuff like that, Rebel's like, no, Lana, Jackie, you guys handle this. I got to go run and do something else. So it's kind of like, wait, you bring all this up to me, lady, and you have me freaking out, and then you're just going to up and leave. But luckily, they made a statement. They were able to get enough attention to finally corner the dude, and Jackie's like, you know what, I'm going to take you to court essentially for the illegal stuff, because it is a situation of the way things are kind of being handled in this situation, because the way Lana was able to handle it is like, I am a cop, and all these cops have families too, so they understand, like, you calling, if you were to call the cops out here, I'd explain to them what's going on, that like, what are you doing to these families and these people who, and even the dad being like, I'm not asking you to raise my kid, not help me fix a diaper, or like, educate my child. I'm just asking you to give us clean water so my child doesn't like get some kind of, effects from it or something like that. So they ultimately, kind of come out on top on that circumstance. And that in itself plays a big crux of, like, Rebel's story this episode, is the fact is she's fighting so many battles on one front. She's helping Jackie on this front. She's dealing with the Stonemore thing, but it's also her own personal life, because everything between her and Grady, because it is a thing that she loves Grady. And Lana tells the story of like, oh yeah, you remember the boat guy I was with and everything? Well, he wanted, dinner at 6, what was it, like dinner at 6, home by 6, maybe like sex at like 9, just in time to watch like 2 episodes of Breaking Bad and go to bed. And it's like, oh, cool. Like he what he wanted. It was kind of set in his system. But for her, it's like sometimes, my job being what it was, like I'll get home when I get home. Sometimes I just want to watch reruns of Girlfriends. So for her, it's like sometimes it's like at one point she just looks over and it's like, I don't want to die like just spending another minute with this person. So it's just as simple. She was like, so what you and Grady have to do is you obviously love him and you both have your own issues, but it's just like so much time is spent not telling your issues to each other. So you need to just take time and be honest with each other. Tell him what's bothering you about things, and let him tell you what's bothering him about things, so you guys can potentially work on things if you want to save things. Obviously, she wasn't able to make the meeting, which obviously it also rubs him the wrong way because he's looking through the magazines and he's seeing Rebel's face, and it's just like frustrating because it's just like that's what that comes down to. He feels like, oh, I'm invisible. Like I can't. For him, it's like I cook dinner for Ziggy, and he's like, no, I love cooking dinner but for him, it's like, I would love for once, just one damn time for dinner just to be made for me. Like, it's just like, he feels like he's not seen, he's not heard. It's understandable why he's kind of frustrated like he is, because it's like, how can I compete with Rebel saving the world? But then Rebel kind of brings it up later on. It's like, you knew who you were kind of getting. You used to love me. You used to love kind of what I fought for and what I believed in and everything. So it's like, you kind of knew what you were getting into. And it's just like, he never, like, that's the problem. Like, at any point in time, did you, because it makes her question, like, it's like, oh yeah, we were, Grady was kind of unhappy. So we went on that trip. It was like 3 days or something. Like, they had sex and stuff like that. But part of her wonder is like, was that kind of a sign that, that he wanted to divorce and whatnot? So, but it's like she even saying like, oh, my name Rebel and stuff like that. But he was like, the name Rebel came from like, it's like, oh, like it's like, I just thought our names went together well like that. He was like, it was never anything more than that, nothing deeper than that, and it's just, it was just very shitty of him to say that. But it's like, obviously she's like, I get it, you're just trying to kick me while I'm down. But it's like, she's trying, but for him it's like, that, because I'm sure that's also, a conversation too of like, she's like, I'm trying, but I'm sure for him it's like, you shouldn't have to try. When it comes to love, it shouldn't just be a thing of you. But it's like, she's trying to, for her, it's like, I'm trying to do the right thing. I missed this because I was trying to do the right thing. But that, also becomes a conversation for her. It's like, am I so busy winning on every other front, like it's costing me my marriage, and it's like, I think for her, that's always been her issue, is like fine-tuning that balance is hard. And I think that's not just her, like everyone has a hard time balancing their work life with their personal life, like a lot of overlap, either you lean more towards one than you do the other, there's finding that equilibrium, it's never the easiest thing. And, and I think Grady's not cutting her enough slack in certain regards, but it, could also be my bias. Like I said, I get where he's coming from, but I also just feel like, but to be fair, I'm not in that relationship where I'm being kind of ignored and kind of feeling like I'm being taken advantage of, in a sense that like, it's like, you're not seeing me, like I'm not feeling important enough to you, because I do love you, but like me loving you isn't enough. Like, it just feels like I'm the one person in this relationship, and it's just like, once again, we don't know if he's ever actually verbally expressed those grievances to Rebel, but his argument probably is like, you don't pay enough attention to me to notice this, so I don't know. So that's definitely going to be an interesting angle as that kind of continues going forward. I brought her up with, but Ziggy's obviously, dealing with things on her own, right? Like, obviously, every day is kind of a day and struggle with the sobriety, I'm sure. And obviously, like, her entire family's kind of at each other's throats right now. Her mom and dad, also her sister and her mom. So it's like there's issues on a lot of fronts. So her family's kind of at war, and kind of having Sean there is kind of like nice to kind of have someone to kind of talk to and just kind of fight back to, like everything that's going on right now as her family's going to war, So I think that, it's an interesting angle. Speaking of sobriety, we kind of heard about that a little bit with Lana. Like, it was like, whoa, you struggle with that too. Because for her, she talked about like, yeah, I was there when I was looking after my niece, like playing dolls with her. But the entire time I'm thinking about wanting to get high. But I put that aside and was there for her. And I honestly, spending those times brushing those dolls' hair and stuff like that, it helped me. And they had the kind of conversation where she was like, because she was basically getting on Benji, her brother's case about the fact of how he was handling this whole situation, that basically don't handle things the way he's done. Because the way he was kind of implying, she was kind of talking about it, like, I guess, like, there were aspects of it where he couldn't really be in Cassidy's life just because, I guess, everything between him and Rebel and just maybe work and stuff like that. So whatever the case may be, it's like, I get it, you are trying on some level to kind of, get back some of that time with Cassidy. So it's like, basically just don't do what you've been doing right now. Like, if you're going to, like, have Cassidy work there, I get it, you're happy to have her there, but just don't, like, manipulate her. Don't, like, let your, like, habits of handling things be, like, how you handle this Cassidy thing. So I just thought that was kind of an interesting, conversation between the both of them, especially after he had kind of got his ass handed to him in court. Because, his argument being like, these patients don't need to be here. Like, I sympathize with what they're feeling, they're suffering, but honestly, Cruz is just using them as a God, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, I was about to say ploy, but like, that is some kind of tactic or some kind of trick, I think, and then Cruz, because the whole argument too was kind of like, they haven't presented enough to kind of bring correlation between the valve and people getting sick, and it's like there's not enough there at the time. But then Cruz is like, yeah, we're past time, and it ends up saying these people aren't a trick or a ploy. These people deserve their day in court, because they had used the representation of, like a banana, like, get one banana, obviously it rots, it can't spread to others, and it's like, that's what's kind of at right now. These people, they're rotting, they don't have time for the months and years it would take for a study to get up to this point. So it's like, these people deserve their time now. And ends up kind of talking about, why he's in, court, and here, once again, like, why these people are here, kind of, like I said, as, like I brought up earlier, Benji kind of got his ass handed to him, in that regard, because earlier, like, because one of the dudes was that Daniel was kind of like, oh, like, I thought you said Cruz was one of the best, because obviously the group was falling apart a little bit, but Rebel was like, that's kind of the point, they kind of want you scared, kind of off balance, kind of turning against each other, because that works in their favor, but then kind of shouldn't have, but she kind of threw Cruz's business out there by being like, his wife, he's one of you, his wife ended up being in a similar circumstances to you guys, and she was in so much pain she killed herself, and you're just like, whoa, because Helen still didn't, like, none of them knew, like, Cruz was up, but it's like Cruz had to pull her aside being like, no, like, she didn't kill, it's like, but you read her, it's like, yes, it's like, okay then, it's like, fine, you don't want to say that she killed herself, she overdosed at the very least, because he was kind of saying, like, oh, maybe, like, her medication, it was too much or whatever, or like, she just happened to take too much, and it's like, for her, Rebel's like, fine, if you don't want to kind of go to that conclusion, at the very least, they're responsible for her overdose, so, but, it's like, but that's not my business isn't your business to kind of tell the group, so why did you tell them? And then Helen and them came out like, no, we still want to stick with you, because knowing that, hey, he's got a personal stake in this too, that what he went through, it makes it go, no, so you understand, and if your personal stake is going to be a reason why you're going to give this case your all, because not everyone else is going to have a personal stake in this case. Like, being sympathetic is one thing, but being empathetic adds a different layer to it, so that ended up being the thing. And so Rebel and him are talking at the end of the episode, and it's a conversation about his wife, it's like her, like, the night, like, she had died, like, for him, he was working, and she wanted a hug, and she held on to him, like, he was going to pull away, but she was like, no, and she held on for, like, 30 more seconds, wanted to kind of take a look at him, and says, like, okay, I love you. For him, it's like, I didn't know that was the last time I was going to hug the woman I've been married to for 38 years. I didn't know that was the last time, but maybe she did. But then it seems like Cruz might be having a heart attack, and he kind of passes out. So it's like, So things are not good on that front. Like, I mean, I'm sure maybe the stress is just everything about his wife, this case, like it's all just probably, too much for him. Whether he's going to be the main one going forward, I don't think Amir's in a position where he can kind of take over things. So, but it's like obviously like if something happens to Cruz, like he's the crux of this. He's the one representing things. So, it's kind of a sad circumstance. So, we'll have to wait and see where everything ultimately ends up taking us. Hopefully things are looking better in the next episode for Cruz. Figure out what's going on that front as things continue. There is no episode next week, but there will be one the week after next on the 5th. So do keep that in mind. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.